House prices in Australia just keep on rising, especially in the capital cities, making the dream of home ownership more and more elusive. The inflated real estate market is blamed on everything from historically low interest rates to Chinese investment to not enough houses. But some economists point to the tax lurk negative gearing as the main culprit. Critics say it's forcing first home buyers out and it's time to end it. One global firm estimates ditching negative gearing and capital gains tax discounts could save the government $9 billion in the first year. Political correspondent Sabra Lane reports.
Hi there, how you going? I'll give you a brochure there. It's just a great location.
Yeah, no, it's close. Yeah.
It's a scene repeated all over Australia. Young couples on the hunt for a first home.
It's quite private down there, so I mean...
Yeah, it is.
This 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment with a lock-up garage is up for auction.
Recently just sort of done a refurb and sort of done a new shower and everything.
Yeah.
It's newly renovated but hardly exotic, yet potential buyers will need deep pockets. Bidding will start at $575,000.
We are looking to buy this property to live in.
Sydney-sider Laura Glasby and her partner want to own their own place. They've been searching for 6 months and are often pipped by investors.
Prices are just ridiculous, and investors are coming in, and real estate agents can be a little bit dodgy and you never know who to believe, and yeah, it's quite stressful.
Yeah, I've lived in the area.
Laura's up against Jeff Carr-Boyd. Initially, he's eyeing this off as an investment.
The reason why I'm investing is more just to get on top of the mortgage to start with for the first 12 months, to help out with that. Then after that, whether it's tax purposes or whatever.
House prices have surged over the past 15 years. Critics argue tax perks like negative gearing have contributed to that growth. Ratings agency Moody's believes the policy adds 9% to the cost of Australian homes. Economist Saul Eslake says the perk should be axed.
We've reached a point now where investors account for more than half the borrowing that's undertaken for the purchase of established properties and nearly half of all the borrowing for purchases of properties of any type. In my view, it's serving to push up the price of the existing dwelling stock to the disadvantage, particularly of younger people.
The Reserve Bank says the composition of the housing and mortgage market is becoming unbalanced, with new lending to investors being out of proportion. One of the major banks this week admitted Australians have an irrational obsession with property investment. The ANZ's chief says there should be a rational debate about tax distortions.
We need to have a mature, considered debate in this country about modifying negative gearing over a number of years, but we need to begin now.
Here's an example of how negative gearing works. The investor usually borrows a high proportion of the property cost, with the interest payments for that loan and all the other expenses, like repairs and rates, are usually so high they dwarf the rent actually earned, resulting in a loss, which is deducted against other taxable income, reducing their tax liability. Eventually, when the investor sells the property, they pocket half the capital gain and pay tax on just the other half. Global professional firm PricewaterhouseCoopers calculates a giant saving to the federal government of $5 billion by 2018-19 if it abolishes negative gearing, and an extra $4 billion by scrapping capital gains tax discounts.
That $5 billion will dissipate over time as a saving to government, and eventually we'll have a much smaller number.
At a time when the government's scouring every department and policy for extra money and prosecuting the case for ending the age of entitlement, there are ideas that can't be pushed into the too hard basket. The original idea for negative gearing was to boost new housing supply for rent.
Many people, of course, do continue to argue that it does something to increase the supply of housing, but that, like so many other things that are said by proponents of negative gearing, doesn't stand a moment's confrontation with the facts.
Instead, critics say investors favoured existing properties. That demand forced prices up and kept young owner-occupiers out of the market. In the policy, they argue, investors will sell up and prices should fall.
I guess it's so difficult for politicians to confront now because something like 1.25 million taxpayers, or about 13% of the total, now have at least one negatively geared property investment, and politicians fear that they can't afford to alienate such a large section of the electorate.
It should be part of the government's tax review. While it's not officially been launched yet, a task force has been set up within Treasury preparing for it. Negative gearing is a complex policy and is likely to become a political football. The Hawke government altered the rules on negative gearing in the mid-1980s, but reversed them after public backlash.
I don't subscribe to this view that reducing or abolishing negative gearing is some kind of magic bullet that all of a sudden cures the woes of the Australian housing industry. You should get over the line.
The housing industry argues negative gearing should stay, that governments tackle stamp duty, land and other taxes instead.
One of the principal arguments made by opponents of negative gearing is that it would supposedly magically unlock all this housing stock as it's offloaded and becomes available for first home buyers. I don't think the real world works in that simple, naive manner.
This is a barbecue stopper.
Senator Xenophon argues the policy needs adjusting to favour new dwellings.
If it's modified to ensure that there is a real driver in new home investments with respect to the rental market for affordable housing, the negative gearing could play a very useful social and economic role.
PricewaterhouseCoopers will shortly publish a tax reform paper after working with the Business Council, unions and community groups over the past 2 years. Tax partner Paul Abbey says calls for negative gearing changes should be just one element of a broad discussion.
Even though they're unpopular, for each person who thinks that issue is unpopular, there's another person who sees it as a necessary piece of reform. What that means is that we need to discuss each one, work out what we should do, what we shouldn't do. But that's a big debate.
Just grab your mobile. Yeah. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. See you later.